to the Whole Topic podcast. Today we have Michelle on again, and we are going to talk about gentle parenting versus permissive and passive parenting. It is um, in a world where a lot of people let their kids free range or whatever that means. Um, this is a topic I really think needs to be discussed because like when I'm sharing, how to give consequences or discipline to the kids if they do something they shouldn't do, people are super worried about hurting their kids, as they should be. You shouldn't want to you shouldn't want to hurt your kids' feelings in any way, shape, or form. That should never be your intention. That being said, sometimes telling them what they're not supposed to do or what to do is going to hurt their feelings. It's just a fact of life, whether you try to hurt their feelings or not. Um, so I want to start out by talking. I'm just going to start with this statement. Your children come out and they need direction. Like kids need direction. I need direction in my life. Unfortunately, I'm in charge of that direction, but um, I have to make my list. I have to make sure things are going well. Um, it's kind of like when I think about it, a few years ago, when I first had kids, I remember listening to this guy, Randy Carlson, on the radio, and I think his thing is called intentional living. And he talked about like the stages of kids, and I kind of always kept this in the back of my mind where he would say, when you have an infant, they're super helpless. And I'm paraphrasing what he said, so don't judge, but he had some good thoughts. But he said, when you have babies, they're so helpless. Like you keep them close. But as they get older, between babies and 3 years old, they're literally attached to your hip pretty much. But you are slowly letting out the line, letting them kind of go a little further. And then from like 4 to 8 years old, that's like another phase. You're letting the line out a little bit further, but you're still very much like, hey, here's the routine. Here's what you can and can't do, like within reason. And then by the time they're 12 or 13, you're hoping that you've invested enough time in them, you've showed them the guidelines of life that they can start making some of the decisions that they need to make on their own. And hopefully you've trained them well. And they will make mistakes, just like we all do. But gentle parenting isn't permissive or passive. I can't say that enough. Like they're so different. They're not even on the same lane to me, because passive parenting is often, oh, you can do what you want. You can it doesn't really matter. You choose the schedule. You choose this. You choose that. And, I might get a little hate for this, but I really think that's a lazy form of parenting. I really, truly think that's a super lazy cop-out form of parenting. And then you sit back and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know why my kids are so XYZ. Why does it nobody like Timmy? Well, Timmy's kind of a disaster. Like, he is not a nice person to be around. You don't even want to be around Timmy because you've allowed him to become this little monstrous, person. And that is not good parenting. That's very it's not fair to your child, and it's not fair to you. Like if you can train your child to be the kind of person you would want to be around, and they can have a relationship with you that's a healthy relationship, that's the end goal of that should be the end goal. So that being said, I want to know, Michelle, from your perspective, when you think of passive or permissive parenting, how would you describe that to someone who's listening right now, trying to figure out why Timmy's a mess?
I think that, yeah, I think in a nutshell, just kind of like summing up and wrapping up what you said, um, people can confuse the two very easily, gentle parenting and passive parenting. And gentle parenting is very proactive parenting. It's really being intentional, thinking about the skills that you want to develop in your children to equip them to be able to handle situations that they're going to encounter or face. And then when we think of passive parenting, it's very reactive. Um, Now, not reactive, I feel like it's reactive on the opposite spectrum. Like some people are reactive where they're explosive and they, yell at their kids and they, they'll hit their kids and do all these various reactive consequences when their child is doing something that isn't acceptable.
Mhm.
On the passive end of things, it's almost as if they don't know what to do. So they just kind of allow things to happen and react in the moment rather than having a plan and a game planned like gentle parenting where it's like, hey, if you do this, then this is the outcome.
Mhm.
And being prepared for those things. And sometimes you can't be prepared as a parent for every obstacle that parenting is going to bring your way. But if there's something that is continuously coming up, there's a pattern that you continuously see with your child. Hey, every time we go out to the store, Timmy is running off. If you know that that's something that he does, rather than being reactive in the moment and screaming for Timmy to come back and to stop doing that, what are you going to do prior to going to this store trip to be proactive and equip yourself with the tools and Timmy with the tools to keep him safe and close by you in the store?
Mhm. Yeah, and consequences are one of the greatest learning lessons for, okay, I do think it's wrong, and this doesn't mean that I'm perfect at it. And so anybody hearing this, yes, I do have my days where I'm like very firm with my kids, like this is not the way it's going to be. I do think there's a time and a place for that, but I think it needs to not just be you're irritating me today. But who doesn't learn from consequences? You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like there is, if we have a consequence for our actions, and our kids, my kids and I, we talk about this a lot. Like, and oftentimes we'll talk about consequences before I actually have to give them. That way, when the time comes, not like you're gonna get this or you have to do this. Like they know and they're ready to accept it because we've already discussed. Like, hey, this is the outcome of this action. That's going to be the consequence. And so they're in on the conversation. But even for me, I tell my kids that all the time. I'm like, I have consequences for my actions, whether they are good or whether they are bad. You reap what you sow, and you will have consequences for how you walk in life. And so I'm not, that's another thing. It's like, it's not hypocritical if that's how you teach your children as well. Like, um, we're all in this. Like you might be at a younger stage than I am right now, but you know, dumb actions have dumb consequences, and smart actions have smart consequences, or good consequences at the very least. Um, so I think the consequence is something that people are so afraid of. Like I might hurt their feelings. Um, for example, I have talked to so many moms with little kids, and they're like, they do this, they hit me, or they disrespect me, or this or that. And it could be that I don't know what's going on in their mind. I don't pretend to know what's going on in their mind. But for me, I've never had my child hit me. Like never once has my child hit me. I don't think they don't feel comfortable with that. I think I don't, maybe it's just how I kind of view parenting already right now. But it like we'll talk about like little consequences, like hey, if you decide to not complete your schoolwork or not do this, the consequence for that is you got to get a rag and got to wipe off the refrigerator. Okay, that's the consequence. Isn't overly horrible. They're usually generally not super upset about the consequence, but it's just the repetitive of, oh, I did that, I'm gonna go like wipe off the refrigerator. Um, so just a baseline for gentle parenting, um, you can be gentle and set firm boundaries with your child. And the boundaries, honestly, if you do not set boundaries with your child, you're doing them a disfavor because how are they going to know how to set boundaries with other people? If
Mm-hmm.
you tell your child, like, oh, I can never say no to you, you're doing your child a disservice because they need to be able to tell somebody else no if somebody's crossing their boundaries. And
Yeah.
that's another aspect of gentle parenting that's actually or passive and permissive parenting that's kind of dangerous to your
Mm-hmm.
child. And I promise you, someone is going to tell Timmy no. I can guarantee you. And if it's like I have told Timmy's no, like if you do that, and if they don't like it, I'm sorry. And I tell their parent like, hey, I'm sorry, like they couldn't do that. Um, so just keep that in mind. Consequences aren't a bad thing. Consequences are a good thing.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Um, I want to talk about this next thing. When you think about, so I kind of base my parenting off of Psalm 23, like shepherding a child. When you think of that, Or yeah, when you think of the shepherding aspect of it, how does that look within your parenting style?
I think that sticking to the line of gentle parenting, a big thing that uh really was brought to my mind a few years ago was this idea of discipline, punishment versus discipline when dealing with your children. So if we want to kind of continue on those lines of consequences. So when early on in my parenting, a lot of times you think, hey, a child does this thing and it's not a desirable thing. You don't want them to do that thing. And sometimes immediately you just want to punish them for doing that thing. But in punishing them, it doesn't teach them or equip them with the skills that they need to not continuously do that thing. They may stop doing it because they didn't like, getting popped on their hand, or they didn't like you raising your voice at them, or they didn't enjoy the consequence of it, so they may not do it again, but it doesn't teach them how to do better in that area next time. It may teach them to suppress that thing, but not to be equipped and have the skills to do better. So when I came in contact with this idea of punishment versus discipline, that really changed a lot of my thinking when it comes to parenting. Because if you punish a child because you don't like something they did, they learn nothing from that. They don't have the opportunity now to grow and develop in their skills and the tools that they have in their pocket moving forward. But when you use discipline, which is a form of discipleship, and as believers, that should be our ultimate goal in parenting. We are raising little disciples. We're replicating ourselves, hopefully the better parts of ourselves, to then go out into this world and be a light for God. And so if we can teach our children through their natural consequences, through some enforced consequences sometimes, as well as through discipling through them and walking them through the process of, hey, this is the way that we do this, and this is why we do this. This is the heart behind it. And we can actually shape their hearts and mold their hearts to have the desire to have that desired outcome, we're going to be a lot more effective in our parenting and the
Yes.
results from that.
And I like kind of where you went with that. Like your goal is not to humiliate your child. Like, and I have this and I tell this to young moms too. Like if I go out, okay, let's say I have Chloe, she's my year old. Let's say she's 18 months, 2 years old, and she decides to just have a meltdown, pitch a massive fit. I'm gonna have to like get her, deal with her, like work with her, figure out what's going on. But I don't care. I hate to say it this way, but I don't care what the person thinks about her. She is growing up, and I'm not embarrassed by her actions because she is a child. And a lot of times, people get so embarrassed about their child acting out, which they should be dealt with. Like you are their parent. You should be the one that helps them process their emotions in that situation or whatever it is you're going to do. Um,
Yeah.
but it took the pressure off me when I decided that my kids are not a show. My
Mm-hmm.
kids are growing human beings. My goal is never to humiliate. At the end of the day, every time we have an issue or a struggle or I have to process something with the children, the end goal, even if we have to split up for a little bit, think on our own, is reconciliation. I always want them to come back at some point within that day that that situation came up and come and feel reconciled because it gives them peace to move forward. It gives me peace. They're not holding grudges against me. I'm not holding grudges about or still frustrated about what happened. And I think something I actually wrote down here is at the heart of gentle parenting. I think it's learning to regulate your own adult emotions so that you can mirror how to take on life's challenges with your kids and that they can learn from you how to regulate their emotions. That's a lot of what parenting, at least in my life, that's a lot of what parenting comes down to is learning to regulate my emotions so that I can then therefore talk to them without just kind of going off. Does that happen perfectly all the time? Absolutely not. Do I fail? Yes. But is that more often than not the goal and the response? Absolutely. That I think is truly one of the cores of gentle parenting. Not letting, them run free and wild. And I have talked to some moms that so regret going and just being like, yeah, just let them do whatever they want. They can have whatever they can eat whatever they want. Just follow their lead. That I have seen just so much chaos come out of that. Um,
Yeah.
so, and if you are in that stage and you're starting to realize, okay, my child is becoming extremely unruly, nobody wants to be around them. Don't necessarily blame other people for not wanting to be around your child. Just kind of take an inward look and be like, what can I do better to help guide them in such a way that no, they don't let people run them over. They don't let people cross their boundaries, but they do know how to be kind. They do know how to stick to, boundaries that people have set around them. So like I said, a lot of it's just a lot of gentle parenting, a lot of parenting, period. It's just regulating your own emotions so that you can mirror it for your children.
Yeah. I think that's good. Yeah, it gives us the opportunity to not have higher expectations for our children than what we have for our own self. Like you you would tell your child like, "Hey, don't yell at me. That's disrespectful." But then you yell at your child. Now, I'm not saying I'm perfect and I don't yell at my children.
Yep.
um, but it's like it really teaches you your own weaknesses and the areas that you have to work on as you're parenting. And I like what you were saying, how like a lot of people have come to a place where they're like, okay, I've been doing this parenting, all backwards, and I really have to get a grip of it. And the foundation of parenting in and of itself is building trust within your children and teaching them that you care. And when they don't have those boundaries, when they don't have that security of knowing what's expected of them, and they just have this freedom to rule and reign, and they don't really know what to do with that, it doesn't create that security and those boundaries that they need, and the guidance actually that they need from you as a parent to be able to guide them through this life.
Yeah, and anywhere in life, in the workplace, it doesn't matter where you go. If there's chaos, that's going to mess with your mind. Like there's no one can live in chaos, no one can work in chaos, no one can do that. You're just like adults, kids need rhythm and they need routine. And we as the parents are supposed to be guiding that through their childhood years. Something I wrote here is like if you have a free-for-all home, your kids are never going to have a point to return to. They're
Yeah.
never their mental health will take a toll. Your mental health will take a toll because you're always going to be putting out fires. Like you just will. And I've seen it. I almost feel the pain that some people are going through because they're just always putting out fires for their kids because their kids are just everywhere like little fireworks. Um, yeah, it's not good. Like they need rhythm, they need routine, and this doesn't mean you can't let your kids go play outside. My kids play outside like as much as they want. Like we live on 64 acres. They are very happy. They love the outdoors. They love the creek. They love taking walks. They love all that. So that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they can't go make those decisions and have those times. But what are the meals like? Do they have a point in the day they can return and know that, mom and dad are going to have a meal at the table. We're all going to get to sit around the table together. Or, um, what does their morning look like? Is it just, hey, get up and just go be free? Like, or is it, hey, like we're gonna eat breakfast, we're gonna do some chores, we're gonna do some responsibilities, and then we're going to, and I have to find, I don't even, it's probably one of those Instagram things. So, but I read it and they were talking about kids that have responsibility. And I'm not saying overloads. There are reasonable age appropriate responsibilities. I love like you can go on Pinterest and like type in age appropriate responsibilities, and there's so many great lists on there that you can pick from. But those responsibilities that kids can do, and if they're age appropriate and they don't feel overwhelmed with them, but they can accomplish them, that will actually help your kid not only with their mental health, but also they feel more confident in themselves because you trusted them with the responsibility to do. So if you're one of those parents like, no, he didn't have to help me, I do everything for him, you are doing zero people favors. Zero. Like nobody is your daughter or son-in-law is going to hate your guts. Your son is not or daughter is not going to be able to thrive in life like they would otherwise. So this whole wild and free thing can be done with, hey, like, yes, I want you to make choices of fun things you want to do, but you still have responsibilities in life. You still have You just still have boundaries around us. Like we all do. I have boundaries around myself too. Like it's not just children, but if you're one of those, and I don't even remember what it's called, but there's this whole thing where it's like this, uh, maybe I shouldn't even call them out. I think I do know who it is now. But your kid just cannot run, they just cannot run around everywhere and never being told no because it's going to happen. When they're out of your home, sweetheart, they are going to be told no 100% of the time. So just keeping that in mind that it's kind of your job to be their safe place. They need you to be steady and to give them some ground rules. I mean, even think about biblically the morals that God has given us to live within. Like, those are beautiful. Are they always super easy? Probably not. But they're morals given to his people to help us stay within the bounds of safety and and he knows they're safe. So as you as a parent, you're going to be able to decide what that is for your child, but just making sure that they feel like they have a safe place to come back to. And if all you have is chaos in your house and you're like, oh, I'm just being a permissive, passive parent, like your child will pay for that in the long run. So you might think you're doing them a favor right now, but you're probably not.
Hmm. I was just thinking about the foundation again of parenting and how um, when we become permissive as parents, it teaches our children that they can't trust us because we're not putting in place. Well, first of all, we're just not we're not actually following through with the things that we're going to do because we're afraid, oh, I'm going to hurt my child's feelings or I'm going to make them upset and I just want to keep them happy and let them lead and do these things, but when you say that as a parent, when you say that you're going to do something and then you don't follow through, now you're not telling your child the truth and they learn that what you say isn't what you mean and they can't trust you, which in the moment it seems like you're doing something good for them, like, oh well, I just gave them what they want and now they're happy with me, but at the end of the day they're never going to be satisfied because they're always going to want more and more and more and require more, and they're not going to be content in life, and also they're not going to trust you, and the foundation of every relationship is trust. And so that's what I really like about gentle parenting, is that it teaches your child not only can you trust that what I say I'm going to follow through with, whether it be a consequence or a reward, I'm going to keep my promise to you, as well as when this idea of just teaching your child that they can trust you, and if your child knows they can trust you, then then their their actions will follow up and show that. And trust is the foundation of every relationship, as well as showing your child that you actually care, which I do think that not gentle parents, but passive parents do a really good job. I think their child will never have a problem believing that their parent actually cares for them, which is a good thing. Um, but it's sometimes at the expense of more valuable things like trust and equipping your child and sending them out into this world ready to actually take on what it has for them, rather than being looked at everyone like, oh, here comes Timmy again. Like, I don't want to. He's coming, and I don't want to be around.
So something that I think about too is like you can't you I personally don't think you have to make your child stronger. Like I don't think you have to be like, oh, you have to do this because I'm trying to make you stronger.
Yeah,
Inevitably, just let life work, give them the responsibilities. My goal is not to make life harder so they're ready for the world. My goal is just to teach them to be responsible people with whatever responsibility they end up with. Life will do what it needs to do. um,
yep.
but when with gentle parenting, I want to share a story that just kind of really impacted me a lot. So when I became a new mom, I think Gil and Megan, they were very small, and then I think I had Britton too. There was this one lady that I knew, and her kids were like super sweet children. And it wasn't like awkwardly sweet, like they might be doing something horrible in their home, and like those kids are just controlled and like very unhealthy. I can spot a family like that. If I can walk in a room, I could spot a family where there's just like not good things going on with that family. Um, but this particular family was different. Like the kids were super respectful, they were super kind, they were just very genuinely like from the parents all the way down to the youngest. And I remember asking her, and this has impacted my mothering so much. Just one conversation I had with this lady. I don't even know if she knows that it did. It like literally turned my parenting from what it could have been to what it had, evolved into. And I was like, so what is it that you do? Like I grew up in a home where it was like the Michael Pearl kind of thing where you just like as strict as ice, or you had to like train your kid to go someplace. You would call them, and then they would get. It was just such a weird thing. I did not want that for my children. So I asked her, I was like, "What do you do to like avoid that?" Because I knew she never spanked her children. Um, and her response was consistency. Consistency. Like that's what she did. Her kids were super respectful to her, but she's like, if I say something, that then I followed through with it. That was her secret. It's consistency.
Yep.
So I started doing that with my kids, and that doesn't mean that sometimes I haven't taught. I've taught them to respectfully appeal things. Like if they're like, hey, I really did want to do that, they're allowed to come back and respectfully appeal. Now, if they give me a sass attitude about it, which
Mhm.
rarely, if ever happens, I can count on one hand how many times I remember my kids sassing me all together, any one of them, because they just don't respond that way to me. But they have a right to come to me and say, "Hey, can you reconsider this? This is what I was thinking about it." They can bring their ideas forward because sometimes I've missed things. Like I'm human. I'm not going to see all their ideas and what it is that they might have been thinking. So I will change in those cases because I'm. It's not like I'm trying to be like I'm consistent and not moving at all. But
Yeah.
like as far as, hey, today it's bedtime. It's bedtime at 8 o'clock, and I'm gonna follow through it. And you need to respect that. Like you need to go to bed. You need to brush your teeth and go to bed. If you're like, oh yeah, no, it's okay. You can be up for blah blah blah. You never have any sort of consistency in anything.
Yeah.
They're going to just feel they're going to feel very lost, to be quite honest. But it
Mhm.
saved me. There's you don't have to consistently discipline when you have consistency with how and following through with what you say. If
Yeah.
you say we're going to eat dinner and this is what dinner is, and we're all going to eat it together, follow through with it. If you say this is your chore, make your bed every morning, you follow through it. You don't even have to get angry. You could just say, oh, this is the consequence if you don't make your bed. And
Yep.
let me tell you, it works. Consistency is king. So I feel like going into what you said with the whole trust thing, like consistency builds that. Consistency builds trust, and you can still absolutely be a gentle parent. Um, you could still, honestly, that just comes with being willing to look at your own self and make sure that um, you're not as a parent just trying to either control and just be. I trust me, there are people out there that are just mean people, and I do feel bad for their children. Um, But if you're just coming at it as like, I'm trying to raise you to be a good person, and like I'm going to just be consistent and kind the best I can. Now, if they mess up, like I said, I think every parent knows this. Sometimes it's easy to lose your cool and be like, hey, I said not to do that. Um, but I kind of I kind of have a more of a the kids like Gilbert. He told me one time, he's my 15-year-old. He was like, Mom, you're super funny, you're super nice, but he's like, when you get firm and you're like, no, we're not actually doing that. He's like you come into a room and something has to get done. He's like, you're not mean. You're just intimidating. And like, I don't try to be. It's just I think my attitude is like, okay, hey, we said let's get this done, or this was the result of not. And but I mean, at least he thinks I'm fun, even if I am a little intimidating. If they need to shape up. I do see that if you have a lack of consistency, that can cause you to be more passive and permissive as well. So keep that in mind if you are in that position where you're just like, I don't know what to do with him, or I don't know what to do with her, or I don't know why they're hitting me, or I don't know why they're doing this. Get consistent in the small things and follow through with the consistency.
That's a great tip. I think that is an amazing place to start.
Okay, so Michelle, what would you leave with someone who's listening to this and maybe they've struggled with being overly like not kind and not gentle in their parenting? Because gentle is definitely something you should really try to be when you're parenting because you're looking at you're shepherding children, you're leading them along.
Yeah.
What is something you can leave with the parent who's either in that position or in the position of, oh my gosh, I have been so passive and permissive, and my kid's a little tornado, and I don't know what to do with them now.
Yeah. I would probably leave them with three things. I love what you said about consistency. So coupling that with this idea of trust, I would say take the time to really teach your child that they can trust you by creating consistency for them. That would be number one. Number two, I would say the goal of parenting, and I think I'm just going to pair number two and three actually together. The goal of parenting is not to punish your children, but to discipline them, which means to disciple them and train them and equip them to have the tools, the resources, the things that they need to be relational, to make wise choices, to just be a productive member in society. And so equipping them and actually being intentional about discipling them in that direction. Discipling your children, being intentional about discipling them rather than punishing them, and equipping them with the tools that they need in order to be a productive member of society. If your children know that you care about them, that's more valuable than anything, because once they know that you care, they're willing to listen to what you care about and what you actually know.
Yeah. And if you're a young mom, you probably struggle. I mean, the old moms too. You probably struggle with mom guilt of like, oh, did I hurt them or are they going to hate me? Blah, blah, blah. No, they're not going to hate you. Like you're doing your best.
Yep.
Some moms, like they have that fear so much that they never want to discipline their child, or they never want to like see through like, hey, like you need to be responsible.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody of all ages, you are raising someone's husband or wife. You're raising your grandkids, father or mother. You're raising someone that's going to be all these. They're someone's friend. Like this is a responsibility not to take lightly. Yeah. But to finalize this, I would like to encourage you, if you are not, and anybody I recommend on here doesn't mean I agree with everything they say, do. Like, I can't think of anything I disagree with her right now on because but I highly recommend following Sally Clarkson. She is an older lady, and I love just the wisdom that she offers to young moms and to women in general, like just people that are in this phase of life. So, and she's already been through it. She's already had the kids, her kids are grown, and now she just shares wisdom for what worked for her. So, but I just recommend following her. And I know there's going to be more topics for me that come out of this particular talk. Because every time we do a podcast, I always am like, oh my gosh, like that could be its own topic just because it can go so deep. But that's just our perspective. That's Michelle's my perspective on parenting and in a society where there was a comedian. He was like, he's people getting on the floor. I laughed so hard. He's like, you see people on the floor, with their child being like, tell me your truth. And it's like, that is so unhealthy. Like it's so unhealthy for you and your child to even be in that position. So happy parenting, whether you think you are or not, you're doing a good job, you're doing your best, but we all can just live and learn from each other. And that's the kind of the goal of this podcast. So we will see you next time. Next week, I guess.